The past 2 years have seen a wealth of electric vehicles entering the Malaysian scene, which means that whatever it is you're looking for, there's bound to be one that will suit your needs. Some of them are relatively cheap. Others provide good performance and a premium feel at a decent price. And then there are those that deliver genuine driver enjoyment, but those will cost you. And of course, there's Tesla, which seems to be the answer to everything in an EV. In the midst of all of this sits the Mercedes-Benz EQE 350 Plus. Long name, and it's not exactly cheap. But it is a Mercedes, and it possesses some impressive range figures. But is it good enough to stand out in this hotly contested market? Well, let's find out. The EQE 350 Plus is the only regular variant in the EQE range, the other being the high-performance AMG EQE 53. It costs a pretty penny, retailing at 419,888 ringgit. Its closest rival is the new BMW i5. They cost pretty much the same, but while the BMW is more powerful and it's better equipped, the Mercedes has a longer claimed range. The EQE is also built on a bespoke EV architecture, whereas the i5 is based on the latest G60 5 Series. The exterior design is a little bit challenging. The onboard design actually works for me, and I do like some of the details like the arrow-shaped daytime running lights and the helix design taillights, and even the flat-faced 19-inch aero wheels are pretty cool. It's the front of the car that I'm really not so sure about. The grille is plain black. There's none of that three-pointed star pattern that you have on the EQS, and as a result, especially on a black car like this, there's just this expanse of nothingness in here, and I really don't like this. But on a different color, it is not so bad. It's not great, but I can just about live with it. The smooth design, along with measures such as the sealing of the panel gaps, does mean that the EQE has an impressively low drag coefficient of just 0.22. That's not quite as low as the Hyundai Ioniq 6 or the new Tesla Model 3, both of which can go as low as 0.21. But for a car this big, that's still an impressive feat. One thing I want to point out are the door handles, which are flush as you expect from an EV these days, as it helps clean up the airflow along the sides of the car and reduce drag. Now these pop open automatically when you approach the car with a key, but in the rare instances that it doesn't, you can simply knock on the door handles and it pops open and you can get in. This mixed reception continues on the inside. At first glance, this cabin looks spectacular, with lots of swooping curves, a large waterfall center console, and some very showy ambient lighting. Take a closer look, however, and you'll notice that the build quality is only so-so. Yes, there's plenty of fake leather and suede on the dashboard, doors and seats, and the wood paneling on the dash is covered with metal three-pointed stars. But the plastics that you do see are hard and scratchy, and some of the panel gaps aren't what you'd expect from a Mercedes that costs over 400,000 ringgit. The EQE also loses out on the EQE's massive hyperscreen, so that's one less thing you get to show off to your friends. But that's not to say that this car is lacking in tech. You've got a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster in front of you, and to your left, there is a 12.8-inch portrait touchscreen, the same one you'll find in the W223 S-Class, so this thing is pretty state-of-the-art. It's also an OLED touchscreen, which means that the colors and contrast are very good, and it runs on the latest Mercedes-Benz User Experience, or MBUX. Now, this has what Mercedes calls a zero-layer interface, and what that means is that the navigation screen is the home screen, and all of your controls are located in these panels over here. It all works well. Everything is located within your reach, and all the settings are where you expect them to be, and that's all very well and good, and it all is very instantaneous and very fast, so that's a good thing. I particularly like the fact that this has a big home button right in the middle, which means that if you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto open, which is wireless by the way, you don't have to fumble around to find the MBUX button. You can simply press this home button and you can get to the home menu over here. The only problem with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is that the button to activate it is on the top right and is very, very small. And you've got two other buttons that are located right next to it, which means that it is quite easy to miss and hit something else. Speaking of which, the two other buttons on the top right are your favorites and your profiles. You can have multiple profiles for different drivers, and you can switch between them by simply touching on this fingerprint sensor down here. Last but not least, your aircon controls are down here. They're always visible even if you're using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and you can control your temperature and your fan speed using these buttons. And for more settings, you can press on this climate menu over here. Now this still isn't quite as good as having physical controls, but if you really want to have touch buttons for your aircon, this is the way to do it. Overall, this latest MBUX system is much easier to use than BMW's latest iDrive. There's much less complexity to the functions and settings, and everything is laid out in a much more logical manner. You also get an excellent 15-speaker Burmester sound system. Well done. On top of that, the EQE comes with ample storage space for all your stuff, such as a big cubbyhole with twin cup holders and a Qi wireless charger, along with some space to store your handbag underneath the center console. Back here, there's loads of room. Mercedes knows how to make a car that feels spacious at the back, and it shows. This seat is in my driving position and I'm 173 centimeters tall. And as you can see, my legroom is basically infinite. I can't even reach the backrest with my feet. Headroom is a little bit limited, however, but the main problem that I have is this backrest, which is very upright. It almost feels like I'm sitting in a pickup truck, which is a little bit unpleasant. Still, the fact that you're sitting so high up means that the visibility outwards is excellent. And you've got your own aircon controls, you've got twin USB-C ports down at the bottom, you've got your own armrest down here with space for your phone, and you've got twin cup holders as well. Open the boot, and you'll find 460 litres of luggage space back here. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, especially when cars like the E-Class and the BMW 5 Series have more than 500 litres. Still, it is of a nice square shape, and there's still plenty of room for you to store all your luggage and any sort of items that you want back here. You can also fold down the rear seats using these two buttons on the boot lid, and there is a little bit of space underneath the boot floor for you to store your charging cables. There are two things that count against it, however. The first is that the roofline slopes quite far back, and because this is not a hatchback but a sedan, the boot opening is very small. Also, there is no hands-free opening or closing back here, which is very disappointing on a car that costs 420,000 ringgit. Lastly, there's no front boot. Even though it looks like there's space for one, there is a bonnet, but Mercedes says only technicians are allowed to open it. That's the reason why the front left fender has a slot for you to put your windscreen washer fluid. On the road, the EQE's performance feels adequate rather than potent. The single rear motor produces 288 horsepower and 565 Nm of torque. That's just enough to get this big 2.4-ton sedan to 100 km/h in 6.4 seconds, on its way to a top speed of 210 km/h. Okay, so the Mercedes lacks the acceleration of some of its dual motor competition, but it's still capable of getting up to highway speeds just fine. And it does so in supreme silence. The EQE's excellent aerodynamics don't just improve efficiency, it also reduces road and wind noise. This is a fantastic car to be cruising long distances in. But the standout feature of the car, and the part that really gives it the legs to go the distance, is of course its range. The big 90.56 kWh battery, combined with the EQE's decent efficiency and slippery aerodynamics, means it can go up to 669 km on a single charge. That's enough to get you from Taiping to JB. Or more to the point, it can get you from KL to Kuantan and back, and still have enough left over to do some sightseeing. And that's important. You see, range isn't such a big consideration if you're just driving around normally. And if all you want is a daily, there are plenty of other EVs that will do the job just fine. But it's a huge deal when you're on a road trip. If you don't have to charge your car while traveling, that means you don't have to factor in the charging time, and that means you can get to your destination and back sooner. That also means that when you get to your destination, you don't really have to worry about, finding a charger and, having to take a Grab or walk to where you want to go. That just makes it so much easier when you're out and about. You don't really have to be tethered to the car being charged, and that really frees up your time, your movement, and so on. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you need even more range, the EQE does have a few tricks up its sleeve. So if you go into the settings, you can turn on some of the eco functions, which says it will boost the range up to 100 kilometers. One of those features is the eco drive mode, which dulls the throttle response, and that means you don't accelerate too quickly and you don't burn off all that electricity unnecessarily. The second is intelligent recuperation. Now this uses the car's cameras and the radar sensors to detect if there's a car in front of you. What that means is that if you let off the throttle and there's no car ahead of you, the car will simply coast without losing too much kinetic energy. Only when there's a car ahead of you will it start to bleed in some of that regenerative braking, and that will slow the car down. The other way the EQE helps you is by showing you this eco display. Now this shows you a glowing ball on either the instrument cluster or the head-up display. Now if you're driving economically, it glows green, telling you that you're a good driver. But if you start to drive enthusiastically, accelerating or braking hard, then it will glow orange and then red, telling you that you're driving like an idiot and you should stop. It also shows you the star rating to tell you how good or otherwise you're driving. I currently have 5 stars, so I would say I'm driving pretty well. You see, I can drive economically. I don't just drive fast. You know who you are. The effect is profound. Even when cruising on the highway where EVs are less efficient, we managed an average of 15.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And we weren't hypermiling. We were cruising at 110 kilometers per hour, keeping up with traffic and passing several cars along the way. That gives you a real-world range of around 580 kilometers, more if you add city driving to the mix. It's clear that the EQE has been set up more for comfortable long-distance cruising than spirited driving. It comes with standard steel springs and passive dampers instead of the EQE's air springs and adaptive dampers, and the handling balance is clear. Out on the twisty Karak highway, the EQE feels like a floaty barge, with not a hint of sportiness. The steering is light and doesn't provide much in the way of feel, even though it's fairly accurate, and there's a lot of body roll when you hustle it in the bends. Still, the car's low center of gravity means it's at least quite stable, giving you a reassuring feel. And thanks to the rear-wheel drive setup, you can partially disable the stability control and get the tail to step out, which is pretty entertaining. The flip side to all this softness is that the EQE rides pretty well. In the vast majority of driving situations, the passive suspension absorbs the bumps, transmitting very little of it into the cabin. This, along with the low noise, gives the EQE an air of supreme comfort that more than makes up for the lack of sharpness in the corners. That seems to be a Mercedes trait over the past decade or so. This is a Mercedes, so it comes as no surprise that the EQE comes with practically every driver assist you'd want. Things like autonomous emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, and lane centering assist for level 2 semi-autonomous driving. And it all works well. The car steers and brakes in a safe and predictable manner, requiring you to do very little other than to put your hands on the steering wheel. You also get excellent auto parking and a 360-degree camera system. Despite the shortcomings, the EQE has turned out to be quite a likable car. Yes, it has its faults, and there are many things that other EVs do better. In particular, if you put it next to its closest rival, the i5, you'll find that the BMW is better looking and better built. It's also faster, and if past BMWs are any indication, it should drive with more sophistication and finesse. And the EQE is no longer the king of range. The Hyundai Ioniq 6 rear-wheel drive and Tesla Model 3 long range are even more efficient, providing a similar level of range despite having much smaller batteries. But amongst proper premium brands, the EQE is still king. It also has the most intuitive infotainment system, and there's no denying that its interior is the most stylish, even though that beauty is mostly only skin deep. But the best part is that the EQE manages to deliver all that with a truly comfortable ride and a level of refinement that befits a Mercedes. And that's why I think the EQE is the perfect EV for road trips. Thank you so much for watching this review of the Mercedes-Benz EQE 350 Plus. What do you think of this car? Would you buy this or the BMW i5? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and ring the notifications bell icon so you don't miss any of our future videos. Read all the latest tech news on soyachinchow.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok as well. This is Jonathan signing out. Stay awesome, everyone. Bye.